Time now for Talking Campus, our weekly discussion with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix Associate Editor Greg Piper for a conversation about the rise of violence and violent threats against conservative students on American campuses. Greg, why aren't universities scrambling to dissociate themselves from this anti-conservative bullying, as they would be if such threats were directed, say, at students of color or alternative sexualities?
I think there's a feeling among a lot of administrators that these students who are being bullied for their political views kind of have had it easy in life. They come into the college as part of a dominant culture, a dominant race, a dominant sexuality oftentimes, and that this is kind of their time to actually feel what it's like to be a person of color, someone who is conventionally marginalized. And they can kind of handle it. They aren't dealing with what you might call psychological issues that come with having grown up as a minority in a community, and their families are probably able to pay for more of their education. They have not had the traditional hardships that are assumed of a lot of people who would be considered marginalized.
Yeah, and this is really, when you boil it down, not critical thinking. This is not education by example. This is kind of shame therapy. It's scapegoating. And the interesting thing about that is that you've created a campus culture where certain kids not only have absolute free speech rights, but those free speech rights extend to the ability to silence and, in some cases, even censor other kids. And if you are on the wrong side of that, not only do you not have free speech, but your very presence now becomes an issue in classrooms. And so with that in mind, the College Fix has written some really great articles documenting the sort of how incrementally worse this is getting on college campuses. Share with us some of the examples of bullying against conservative students or traditional students that seems to have been in the news lately, and how they're moving down the road quite quickly now.
One of the things that we often see is when conservative students write opinion articles on their own student paper, they face a lot, not just criticisms for their argument, but attempts to shut them down and to shame the paper into not publishing these kind of articles, or to creating special sections that are reserved for marginalized people, perhaps with really no editing, simply like an online forum. But actually in the newspaper, above the fold, things that people get to argue without really anyone contradicting them. This happened to one of our writers, whose name is Brian Staskovich. He's at Wesleyan University. He wrote a pretty mild critical article about tactics in the Black Lives Matter movement. And the result from campus activists was to try to defund the newspaper. The student government got in on this. They suggested changing the funding formula. Things that are really going to make it hard for a newspaper to go on with this. It's a message to be careful what you publish, even if it looks okay to you, even if it doesn't really look like it's something that's going to rile feathers, because you don't know what's going to happen when you publish even what might be called middle of the road or reasonable comments about this. We've seen this from other students who write op-eds. Jonathan Zhao at Duke University, who's the opinion editor, he wrote a column that had some hard words for the Black community, and saying that a lot of the problems here are traceable to practices and cultural attitudes in this community, stuff that you really would want to respond to and to make a reasoned argument against it. But again, the target there was to get him actually kicked out of his role as opinion editor, to shame him and to say that he is actively harming students on campus simply by making a polemical view. Stuff that happens all the time from people who are arguing on the other side, who are saying that we need safe spaces and we need to be protected, and that these words harm us. But they're not going to extend the same grace to people who have a different view.
And that's a remarkable point that bears repeating to the folks watching at home. This is not just the undermining of the classroom, right? The argument that the classroom is such a hermetically sealed environment that this doesn't spill out into the real world. This now threatens the very fundamental principles of journalism. If certain people have to be punished for expressing views, it undermines much more than just what goes on in a teaching classroom. And Greg, as we wind down, give us, I know there's a great example from the University of Chicago, which historically has been one of the freer and one of the more committed to free speech universities out there. Talk a little bit about the controversy brewing at the University of Chicago right now.
So a professor in the business school at the University of Chicago invited Steve Bannon, President Trump's former chief strategist, former head of Breitbart, to come to a debate on campus about globalization and immigration, and to talk about his view, which is shared by many people in America and has a lot of adherents around the world, too. This is not simply an American issue. When this got out, student activists started to organize against it. They protested in front of the business school. Faculty signed an open letter to the administration saying that this would actually threaten the lives of the Black communities around the University of Chicago. Student government leaders said that it could create another Charlottesville, that people's lives were actually in danger if he came to campus, that suddenly white nationalists would come and someone, the implication being, would actually drive into a crowd of people, let's say protesters who are outside protesting this, and kill somebody. This is kind of really over the top. This guy is known for economic nationalism, for a view that you might say is the base view of America first. And he's controversial, he's polemical, but I don't really associate violence trailing him in this way. And I think students and faculty, even at a place like the University of Chicago, just kind of let their paranoia get away with them. This is going to be a debate in a venue with a moderator and someone arguing against him. It's the very definition of a public affairs program. And so far, the administrators have stood up and said anyone can invite anyone they want to speak on campus. But you have to wonder, is even the University of Chicago going to back down eventually, or to make concessions, or to treat these students differently simply because they say that words are violence?
It really does seem like on the modern campus, the smaller the potential infraction, the larger the hyperbole about how bad it's going to get. Greg Piper, associate editor at The College Fix, thanks for your time today. And be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from The College Fix editors by joining us on our social media platforms.